Hey, it's Mr. Freaky, and this is the first episode of Is It Real?, where I bring you 3 stories that blur the lines between reality and fiction. I have removed all the identifiable details from the tales, and at the end of the episode, it's up to you to decide whether they were true or if it was a product of my twisted imagination. Then at that point, leave your guesses in the comments, and I will pick one winner to get a shout out in the next episode. Today we delve into a story that has haunted a nation. This is the tale of an infamous South American cannibal. A country rich in natural beauty and diverse culture hides within its history a chilling tale that still haunts the minds of its people to this day. This is the story of a man whose name has become synonymous with terror and unimaginable disgust. He was born to a poor farming family in the 1950s in a humble rural town in the countryside. He lived a seemingly ordinary life, but beneath the surface of normalcy lay a disturbed mind plagued by dark impulses. As a young man, he exhibited strange behavior, often talking to himself and displaying signs of mental instability, eventually slaughtering cattle and chickens to act out these twisted desires. Despite this, though, he managed to stay mostly under the radar, living quietly and unnoticed for much of his life. In the late 1990s, the tranquility of his area was shattered by a series of gruesome discoveries. Local farmers began finding human remains scattered near a river. Limbs, bones, and decomposing bodies were unearthed, sending shockwaves through the community. Fear and suspicion spread like wildfire as the police scrambled to identify the perpetrator. In the mid-90s, he was arrested for the murder of a transient man, whom he cannibalized and then was subsequently institutionalized. At one point, a homeless man reported him to the police, claiming he had eaten his friend. The police didn't even believe the claims because it seemed so outlandish, but eventually, they went to go check out the homeless man's story, and they found numerous dismembered body parts sitting by a river, along with the cannibal, his face covered in blood. 2 years later, he managed to get let off on good behavior and began living in a ranch at a park in his city. He lived as a homeless person near a river in a makeshift shelter he constructed from scrap materials. His isolated lifestyle allowed him to carry out gruesome acts without drawing much attention. He murdered and ate several people in that park. Despite his efforts to hide the bodies, evidence of his crimes were found out by the police. Though they assumed that the area was the burial ground for victims of drug dealers or even a satanic death cult. His arrest came in 1999 when he was caught red-handed attempting to butcher a corpse by the river. The police were horrified to discover that he had been living off human flesh for years. He then confessed to killing and consuming at least 14 people, claiming that human meat was tasty and likening it to pork. It is rumored he would even make a popular dish out of human meat and sell them to his neighbors. During his interrogation, he revealed his gruesome methods. He targeted vulnerable individuals, such as vagrants and drifters, luring them to his makeshift camp. He used primitive tools like a spear and often consumed the flesh raw or cooked over an open flame. However, he claimed to have preference for certain body parts, such as thighs and arms, as well as men over women, claiming that males were tender and tasty. He also avoided eating overweight individuals, as he believed their flesh was too fatty. His trial was a media sensation, with the public horrified by the details of his crimes. He showed no remorse, insisting he had done nothing wrong. Instead, he claimed that he was simply fulfilling his natural urges. The court found him criminally insane, and he was committed to a psychiatric institution, where he remains to this day. The tale of his infamous deeds seeped into local folklore, inspiring a haunting song that echoed through the streets and homes of the country. The song, a grim ballad, painted a vivid picture of the horrors that he inflicted upon his victims, which became a way for the community to process the terror and to warn future generations of the darkness that can lay in every human soul. Now on to story 2, The Cursed Sculptures. Nestled in the rolling hills of a small picturesque town lies a place known for its serene landscapes and quiet charm. But behind this idyllic facade, the town harbors a dark and chilling secret. This is the story of a talented sculptor whose name became synonymous with terror and the supernatural. Born in the late 1800s to a well-respected family in this quiet town, the sculptor exhibited a remarkable talent for creating lifelike figures that, if looking at the right angle, almost seemed as if they were breathing. The works were celebrated for their detail and realism, earning fame and admiration far beyond the hometown. However, beneath the artistic brilliance lie a troubled soul. The sculptor was known for his reclusive nature, often spending days and nights locked away in the studio, tirelessly working on sculptures. He claimed that his inspiration came from vivid dreams and whispered voices, guiding his hands as he molded the clay and chiseled stone. In the early 1900s, the tranquility of the town was shattered by a series of inexplicable events. Local villagers began to report strange occurrences, eerie lifelike sculptures appearing in the woods. Fear and suspicion spread like wildfire as the town searched for an explanation. The breakthrough came when a group of townsfolk, driven by curiosity and fear, decided to investigate the sculptor's secluded mansion. What they found within its walls defied all logic and reason. The sculptor was discovered in the studio, surrounded by dozens of sculptures that seemed almost alive. Each figure bore an uncanny resemblance to missing villagers, their expressions frozen in lifelike detail. Authorities were horrified to uncover the truth behind the sculptor's art. He claimed that whispered voices in his dreams from the dead villagers had guided him to immortalize their figures perfectly. His talent, it seemed, was a dark gift. His trial was highly publicized, considering the supernatural implications of the crimes. The sculptor showed no remorse, insisting that he was merely an instrument for the spirits to connect with the world of the living. The court found him guilty of murder, and he was committed to a psychiatric institution, where he remained until his mysterious death a few years later. But the horror doesn't end there. After the sculptor's death, his mansion was abandoned and left to decay. Locals avoided the property, claiming it was cursed. However, over the years, many who have ventured too close reported hearing whispers and seeing old sculptures move on their own. For this, the place has become a local legend, a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead are blurred. And now for story 3, The Strange Sisters. In a serene town lived two identical twins, whose story has intrigued and disturbed many for decades. These twins were born to a family who had immigrated to the country. From a young age, the twins exhibited an unusual bond, communicating only with each other in a private language that no one else could understand. The twins' silent world became a concern for their parents and teachers. Despite numerous efforts, they remained isolated, choosing to communicate solely with each other. Their secret language, coupled with their synchronized actions, made them seem almost otherworldly, especially when they started swapping who was who. Years later, one would summarize the dynamic with her sister as such. One day she'd wake up and be me, and one day I would wake up and be her. And we used to say to each other, "Give me back myself. If you give me back myself, I'll give you back yourself." As the twins grew older, their behavior became increasingly bizarre. They were eventually sent to separate boarding schools in an attempt to break their intense bond. However, this separation led to a complete withdrawal, with both girls becoming almost catatonic. Realizing the severity of the situation, their parents reunited them, and the twins once again retreated to their private world. In their teenage years, the twins began to express themselves through writing. They wrote novels and stories set in a dark, twisted world, reflecting their inner turmoil. Despite their creative outlet, the twins' behavior took a darker turn. They engaged in petty crimes, including arson, which eventually led to their arrest. In the early 1980s, the twins were committed to a high-security psychiatric facility, where they were diagnosed with a severe personality disorder. Their time in the facility was marked by continued isolation and an eerie pact between the sisters. One of them had to die for the other to live a normal life. In the early 1990s, After more than a decade in the facility, the twins were transferred to a lower security hospital. During the transfer, one of the twins suddenly fell ill and died of a rare inflammation of the heart. Her death was as mysterious as their lives had been, with no clear medical explanation for the sudden illness. While her sister's untimely death was certainly shocking, so was the effect that it had on the other. She suddenly began speaking for the first time in her life, as if she had been doing so all along, and this was after close to 30 years of silence. She was later released from the hospital, and by all accounts began living a fairly normal life, after such a very strange upbringing. And now, dear viewers, it's time for you to decide which ones of these stories were real and which were made up. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and I will let you know the answer in the next episode, unless you'd look them up, which I'm sure a lot of you will. Try not to, though. There will be a link to it in the description as soon as the next episode is posted. Until next time, have a horrific evening, everyone, and remember to stay spooky, my friends.